Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this DIY crepe paper Plumeria flower. The supplies you're going to need for this are 180 grams crepe paper, an 18 gauge wire, pan pastels and a sponge, glue gun, corsage tape, wire pliers, a curling tool like the Cricut scraper so we can curl our petals back. You could probably also use a wood dowel if you want to, and the templates, which are free on my blog, and the link is below this video. I do recommend crepe paper for this particular flower, but you can also try using text weight cardstock as well if you want to give that a go, but I'm teaching it here with crepe paper. You're going to need to cut out at least 5 Plumeria petals, and you can cut up to 6 if you want some variation if you're making a lot of these flowers. So let's go ahead and get started. To start, I'm just taking my pliers, and at the very tip of my 18 gauge wire, I'm creating a very tiny loop. So this is going to act sort of as a stopper when we thread our wire through the center of our flower that we're going to build. So just create a very tiny loop at the top there, like a little tiny circle with your needle nose pliers, so that it will act as a stopper when we go ahead and thread it through, and you'll see what I mean by that when we get to that step. So the next part here is I have my 5 petals cut out. You can do up to 6 if you want. And I'm just using my pan pastels here and a sponge to be able to blend some color here into the lower half of each of these petals. I really love to use things like distress ink or these pan pastels for my paper flowers. I will say that pan pastels are a little messy in my opinion. They do get on a lot of things. They'll get on your fingers and they can rub off onto things. They're generally not too hard to clean up. Some surfaces are harder than others. The surface I'm working on right now is my craft desk, but I've covered it in some saran wrap so that I can just pull it off and be able to clean the surface much quicker as I transition into building the flower. So go ahead and coat all of your petals here if you're following this step. You don't have to do this step. I just think it adds a little bit of a realistic touch to the flowers. I was using a gold. I'm using now like an orange. I just realized I was using the wrong one, so I switched over to an orange because you can see there's a little bit darker than the yellow was on this paper. So I'm going with kind of a dark orange there, and that's going to create a lot of depth to our flower when we actually build it. And you don't have to do this part, but I do think it's really pretty if you're able to do it. Okay, so for the next step, I'm using my Cricut scraper tool here to actually curl the petals. If you don't have this tool, you can find it online on like Amazon, or you could use a wood dowel. I just like using this. You could even use the edge of your scissors if you want to. That would probably work just fine as well. I do like using this tool because I do have it on hand. But you're just going to grab each petal by the bottom, and then right along the top, you just want to make it so that it curves back a little bit. It doesn't have to be a drastic curl. It can just be very subtle, but you do want to make sure it has a little bit of a curl to it because it's going to help give the flower shape rather than it being rather flat. So do that with all 5 or 6 of your petals. So now that my petals have all been curled and we're ready to start building the flowers. So I'm just grabbing my glue gun and I'm adding a little bit of glue to the bottom inner side of one petal and slightly overlapping another petal. This is a very simple flower. You're just going to do this with all 5 petals. So just overlap at a slight angle, I'd say about a 45-degree angle. If you wanted to add a lot more petals, then you could make the angle a little bit tighter, but Plumerias typically only have 5 or 6 petals. So to stay true to the Plumeria look, if that's what you're wanting to achieve here, then I would stick with the 45-degree angle and use 5 or 6 petals for this flower. So the next step here is just going to be to actually close the rest of the flower. Just add some glue to one side of the open end of the petal and then close it completely. And this will make it kind of turn into a 3D bloom at this point. Try to keep your overlap even as you've been doing all along so that all the petals look like they've bloomed evenly to each other. There should still be a very tiny, tiny little hole in the center of your Plumeria as you close it. Usually you don't have to really try and leave this, it will just kind of naturally be there. You don't need a lot of space. You'll just need barely enough to slide the wire through, which is what we're going to do next here. So using the open end of your wire, slide it all the way through so that that little stopper we created by curling the tip of the wire down is going to be inside the flower. So you're just going to slide it all the way down so that it's going to act as a stopper, like I mentioned, to where your petals will stay on the flower. Now the bottom of your flower is going to feel loose here, so we need to do something about that. So what I typically do is I will add a little bit of glue, and then I will add some corsage tape to really get that bottom part of the Plumeria to feel, secure to the stem there. That little curl that we made with our wire at the top at the beginning of this tutorial is what's keeping it from falling off the end of our wire, but we need to make sure that our bloom doesn't slide up and down the wire, so adding a little bit of glue and wrapping some corsage tape right around the base there and kind of marrying it to the wire as you wrap it down the wire is what's going to hold that whole thing right in place where you want it to be. I'm just letting the glue dry a little bit here before I actually start twisting my corsage tape, because if I twist it too soon, then it may not stick where I want it to with the flower. So I've got my corsage tape all wrapped here down the center of the stem, and this is how our flower looks. This is a very simple design, but it's really pretty, especially if you add that shading with pan pastels or ink. You can make them in the traditional colors of pink and orange and like white with a yellow center to it, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. I think I lost it on my craft table here. There we go. So you can make these in lots of different colors, and they're really beautiful and very simple, and you can grab this template for free on my blog, abbykirstingcollections.com. The link is in the corner of this video and also below in the video description as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and be sure to check out my blog for more freebies, and I will see you guys next time.